All right, let's rock and roll. Turn this music off. What is going on, Florida State family, Seminole Nation, in the 863 tribe? It is your boy Pope, a.k.a. Alo, a.k.a. the Goddamn Truth. And it is Thursday, January 18th, the year of our Lord 2024. This is the 103rd episode of this podcast that I started. And I want to mix it up a little bit. Look, I know we're going to talk a little bit about transfer portal stuff because we at Florida State had another player hit the portal today. We'll talk a little bit about him. And, there's still Bama's just continuing to implode. And we'll talk a little bit about that. But I want to mix it up a little bit. I kind of want to look at the roster for the spring. I want to do an early look. I feel like everybody just talks about same stuff. When I'm listening to people, we just talk about the same stuff. I want to do a little bit of a look ahead. So I'll be the first one to do a little bit of a look ahead. And we're going to do our early spring position battles, man. What are some of the positions that we're going into spring? What are we confident? What are the positions that I think we're confident in? What are some of the positions that are definitely going to have something to prove? Who's battling for said positions? That's what we're going to do on this Thursday evening. So as always, hit the like button, subscribe, and share. You are on the most interactive show on YouTube for the Florida State football fan. You are on 863 Seminole TV. We're going to do a roll call like we do for every hangover. Then we're going to get right into the topics. So get in that chat, get them comments. Let your presence be known. Again, share the videos. Let everybody know we are live so we can get this audience, get this number up. We're about to get it cracking here in a little bit, as I know more people will eventually start to fill in as we continue to talk. But yeah, we got some interesting position battles, man, for this upcoming spring. Just that I think the team in general, and this is my talk as I pause, so to speak, for the until we get really started. But this team in general, man, really excites me. I think for a lot of reasons. For a lot of reasons. What's going on? Give me 1 second. All right. Let's not waste no more time, man. Let's get in these comments. Let's get this roll call going, and let's get right into it. Todd Pope is in the building. Terrell Thomas, Donald Gilsey, Peter Shields, James, Jeff Hill, Tyler Hedden, Hypnotic, Sports Mart, Panama Jack, 850, Florida State Love, Grill Master, Chad Kinsler, Black Shear, Richard Prite, and Vontae B are all in the building, man. Again, as you continue to come on in, Kendrick Ross in the building. Just go ahead and let your presence be known, and we'll get you a quick shout out here as we continue. Joshua Burrell. It's a move that we've kind of been, predicting for a while. Irv in the building, KC in the building. It's a move that's kind of been, I don't want to sound insensitive to a guy who, coming out of high school, I actually liked him a lot. Just when you can't stay healthy and you can't stay on the field, man, it's hard to stay on a roster. Show enough is in the building. But it is a move that I think was expected at this point. But he's decided, of course, to enter the transfer portal. Now, the cool thing about Burrell's situation is he actually will graduate FSU after spring. So he won't transfer till after the spring. And then he has 2 years of eligibility as a grad transfer. So that's actually pretty cool. Usually, grad transfer, you only have that 1 year. But he's going to have 2 years of eligibility as a grad transfer, which, if I'm interpreting that correctly, I think he could potentially, well, I mean, with the way the rules are now, he could transfer all he wants. But assuming, though, that rule eventually changes, which I have a feeling that rule will change again. And if it does, he will still have, I think, 2 transfers in his pocket because, well, this initial one, which would be a grad transfer, and then maybe just the regular transfer. So hopefully he finds a place that he can go and get a chance to showcase his ability. The unfortunate part for Burrell is, again, simply when you can't stay on the field, and to be, when you can't stay on the field and when you can't stay healthy, you can't develop. And FSU has flat out just recruited over him at this point. You got to remember, like, he committed what? Burrell's been on this team since COVID. I think Burrell's been on this team since COVID. He hasn't had a steady position, I think, since he's been on the team. I mean, they moved him from running back to receiver. Basically, whenever they need to fill a hole in either the receiving room or the running back room is when they have, depends on the position they list him at the time. So hasn't had a stable position, hasn't been able to stay healthy. He's been recruited over at this point. Again, no negative talk about Burrell. I wish him the best. Again, he's a guy who I actually liked his skill set coming out of high school. He just wasn't able to put it on display for us, wasn't able to get it on the field. And at this point, FSU has recruited to a point where he probably was never going to get the opportunity if he stayed. So shout out to Burrell. Wish him the best. Was a fan of his. I was still am a fan of his, but it is a guy that we kind of thought this is a move that should be expected by most. So that's really the big news as far as since the last time we've talked, folks. I don't think FSU's done much in the portal themselves since the last time we talked. However, Caleb Downs, Proctor from Bama have all hit the portal since the last time we've talked. Washington's team is also now starting to sort of implode. I don't know if that's the right word, but they are now starting to hit the portal as we speak. This is what happens when in the way that college football is designed. And frankly, I'm not mad at any of it. I've seen some people say this needs to change. Look, we've talked about the transfer portal window maybe needing to change even before Nick Saban retired. But at the end of the day, I think I think Alabama did this to themselves, quite frankly. I think Alabama did this to themselves. I think Alabama, the way this is starting to play out, I wholeheartedly believe now that DeBoer was not the first or second choice for Alabama. They had to know that you couldn't bring in a head coach that had no ties to this roster. Guys are transferring not because they don't think DeBoer is not a good coach. I don't know if I called out Jeff. I see Jeff in the building, Nathaniel Gates, Jeff Allen, Irv, Cooper Coop, and Grand Champion. They had to know that this coach didn't have any connection to this roster. And they're not transferring because he's not a good coach. I think everybody knows and expects him to be a good coach. But he didn't he didn't even recruit into any player on this Bama roster. And I wholeheartedly believe that Lanning and Norvell were higher choices for Alabama for the simple fact if they hired either one of those two coaches, Bama probably keeps the majority of that roster intact. Because Mike Norvell's in a lot of recruiting battles with Nick Saban over the years. So was Dan Lanning. They recruit the same caliber of player. Even though Lanning's not in the Southeast, he did coach in the Southeast, and he took those grounds to Oregon, and he still recruits that area and that caliber player. And of course, Florida State recruits the same area as Alabama. It's very interesting to see what's going on the transfer portal side of things, especially when it's not your team. It's very interesting. There's no way, and I haven't done this yet. I don't know if I'm going to. But a lot of people are starting to put up their way too early top 25s. I don't know how, as of January 18th, 2024, Bama can even sniff the top 10. I'm not even sure they can sniff the top 15. I don't know how you lose your best DB, your best offensive lineman, your best wide receiver, a ton of depth. Bama's going to be Bama's going to be a shell of himself. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see. You got to kind of wait and see what the plan is for that spring window for Alabama. You got to think he's going into the spring with the plan, and he should be attacking that portal heavy. But Bama's going to be a different team than we're used to seeing. I think that's pretty evident at this point. And of course, the 2025 class is being impacted by the Nick Saban retirement as well. So a lot of interesting things going on in the transfer portal. Again, I don't want to waste too much time on stuff that's not FSU related, but at the end of the day, I am a college football fan. So a lot of this stuff is interesting. And in a lot of ways, some of this stuff is affecting the Seminoles when you talk about transfer portal as guys continue to hit the portal. I don't know if FSU is still looking to make any additions. Part of me really thinks FSU might be done for this window, and they may pick some stuff back up post spring. Of course, that all changes depending on who hits and if there's relationships there. But I think FSU is really kind of hit on all the points of emphasis right now. And now you kind of have to let spring weed out some more guys. We just talked about at the beginning of the podcast. We talked about Burrell hitting the portal. Well, that same thing's going to happen after the spring as guys, and we're going to talk about, that's what this show is about, the position battles. As guys win and lose places on the depth chart, as we know, more attrition, and then FSU may hit that spring portal window to shore up the last few spots on this roster before you really get a complete roster. Before we go to the position battles, man, let's get to the comment section. Again, hit the like button, guys, subscribe and share. Mostly just hit the like and share. Do a big thing. Hit the like and share. Let's get to the comments. See what we got here. I got Jeff with a $20 donation. Shout out to Jeff with a $20 bomb. He says, their NIL is not as strong as you think. Alabama's biggest draw was Nick Saban. Yes. So shout out to pretty much everybody in here listens to the NoCast, and that's a piece of information that Bud Elliott has put out about Alabama, and it makes a lot of sense. And if you look at it, that Bud seemed to be spot on with that report, assessment, whatever you would like to call that. Bama didn't have to reach down deep in the pockets for NIL as a FSU, as a Miami, and some of these other schools, because players, Proctor is a perfect example, the left tackle out of Iowa. The man had been committed to Iowa for most of the recruiting cycle a year ago. He was the 1 or 2 rated offensive lineman at last year's high school. Between him and Maigoa, top 2 O-linemen, right? Committed to, I believe he's from Iowa, but I know he was committed to Iowa for almost the entire recruiting cycle only to flip to Bama. Well, why? How else does Alabama get a player like that? Well, that guy probably looked and said, well, Nick Saban, and Bama has a track record of getting their offensive linemen into the league and first round, as a matter of fact. Made a lot of sense. No coincidence that Nick's gone, and now he probably goes back to Iowa, though I'm sure now he'll test the transfer portal market where he may be. I know Downs is out there, but Proctor plays one of those positions, right? Now, safeties are cool. Safeties are flashy. Safeties do some good things. But franchise left tackle can get you to across the finish line, and he plays that position. So, in my opinion, he probably is the most coveted guy out there right now. I know how great of a player Caleb Downs is, but he's probably, in my opinion, literally and figuratively speaking and literally speaking, the biggest fish in the pond to be caught is Proctor. But shout out to that comment, Jeff. Absolutely hitting the nail on the head with that one.
Jeff.
Bama wasn't complaining until the portal started biting them. I will say this. And as much as I've made a whole show about how college football is dead, and I still think for the most part, again, college football isn't dead. The college football you knew is definitely has died and passed on. But if there's one thing I am pretty certain of, Tyler, is that there is a college football god somewhere. Because if this isn't karma, and look, it's not Bama's fault. It's not Bama's fault that they got the playoff nod. A lot of politics, and we know we've had 2 months or however long it's been, or a month, whenever the snub happened, December, January. We've had all this time to talk about that, and everybody on TV told you what the reasons were. Oh, Deion told you can't leave Nick Saban out the playoffs. Stephen A. told you it's Nick Saban, it's Alabama. They're not getting. So everybody told you the agenda. They told it blatantly. Not only did they tell you, they told it to your face, and they laughed while they told you. But if this isn't proof that there's a football god, I don't know what is. And again, it's not Bama's fault. The agenda Bama just they. Let me take a drink real quick. Sorry. Bama just got what they got coming to them because of their allegiance. Well, their SEC and the allegiance ESPN has to the SEC. At least that's my belief. Whatever. But unfortunately, they're paying for the sins of everyone else. And, it is what it is. I don't feel bad for them. I don't really feel bad for any of these schools. Because in the past, the head coach would move on and you'd be stuck playing for a guy that you may not want to play for. So I don't feel bad for any of the schools. I think, if anything, the schools that you can feel the worst for are Washington and Arizona, just from the fact that they're having to react to the Alabama situation. But Bama will be okay. I can't feel bad for guys that's making $8, $10, $9 million a year. So this is karma for Bama being selected. Yeah, there you go. This is karma. If Bama wasn't in the playoff, then Saban wouldn't have left earlier. Right. Like I said, there's a football god. There is a football god. Let me scroll up. Falling a little bit behind in the chat. What's up, Jalen? How are you? He says, who do y'all think will possibly leave after the spring? Well, we'll talk about it here in a second. Casey says, how do you become a member? So if you're watching on your phone, I think YouTube has updated some things, and you can no longer do it from your phone. If you are on your computer, there is a money sign right where you type in your chats. There's a money sign. If you click that money sign, you'll see super stickers, super chat, membership, and membership gifting. Click membership. That's how you become a member. I honestly don't know how you do it on your phone. I think YouTube has changed it so now that you can no longer become a member from your phone, but I don't have the answer for that one. I apologize. Sportsmark says Bama ain't letting the kids out their NIL deals. That's nasty work. I don't know the litigation with all of that. I think Bama might want to be careful with some of those not letting kids out of NIL deals. At the end of the day, I'd be interested to see how those are structured and worded, because is Bama really going to pay a kid to go play somewhere else? Because ultimately, that's what's going to happen anyway. The NIL deal does not link them to Alabama in the sense of, my guess is if you left, that the contract would become null and void. But again, I'm not a lawyer. I don't know. Grand Champion says, where do you grade the portal guys? We got a lot so far. I'm not sure if you covered it in prior shows. Sorry, I missed a few working these damn elevators. I don't think I've actually graded, like did a grade for each guy. I do, if I recall correctly, we did talk about them though, and I kind of gave my thoughts on them. I don't know if I actually gave grades. Montre's in the building. Coop says, Polk, my friend's mom, I can't say his name, but he's an FSU player. But the player told his mom that Norvell was going to take that job. And if Downs goes to Georgia, what's going to happen to KJ Bolden? Well, the good thing for KJ Bolden is two safeties can play on the field at the same time. So there's that. If KJ is that guy, he'll play on the same. He'll play opposite of Downs. If he's not, then he just has to wait his turn like everybody else. Caleb Downs is a special player. One of the better safety prospects I think we've seen in a long time. And he was just a true freshman this past year, which is crazy. So it's going to be interesting. Oh, you said NLI. I may have read it wrong. I apologize. So letter of intent. Bama's not letting players out of their letters of intent. Interesting. So the rule is coach gets fires or leaves. Players are allowed to transfer. That should also include. So it'd be interesting to see does that include incoming players, guys who aren't technically on the roster yet. That may be the loophole there. So that'd be interesting to see. What's up, Kane Zay? And then Jeff with a $10 dono. And then we'll get into these position battles, man. But Jeff says, heard they're interested in a linebacker in Auburn. But he'll have to wait till May to when it opens again, I think. Okay. That linebacker is who I think you're talking about. He's not a linebacker like we're thinking. He's an edge rusher. Which, again, I don't know if FSU is in need of an edge rusher at this point. But let's talk about these position battles. Once again, thanks for Jeff. So this is Jeff's second dono. So we're going to give him, you know what? We're going to give Jeff some Peter Work action. Yeah, more money, yeah, more money, yeah. So we'll just go down the roster, guys, to the best of my ability. As obviously, quarterback. There's not really a quarterback competition. Okay, you brought in my head. Now that doesn't mean that Brock Glenn shouldn't approach it. I mean, if you're Brock Glenn, you're sitting here and you're saying, "Man, I won an ACC championship on short notice as a true freshman. I'm coming into next year competing for the starting job," and he wholeheartedly should have that mindset. But at the end of the day, I think everybody would agree DJU is going to be the quarterback. So there's not really a position battle there. I think where the real battle happens, obviously, is second and third. FSU just got a commitment from a blue chip Elite 11 quarterback. And by all intents, from everything I'm hearing, everything that's being sort of put out there in the Twitterverse is that this guy's going to actually be brought on as a walk-on. So they were able to bring a 4-star quarterback in as a walk-on. And that, in my opinion, is a big deal. Last year, we had 4 quarterbacks in that room. And this year, we again will have 4 quarterbacks in that room. 2 freshmen. Does Brock save his red shirt? Did Brock play more than 4 games this year? I think Brock might be a red shirt freshman next year. I think he may have saved that red shirt. That young core of quarterbacks that I'm speaking of right there, that's going to be fun to watch. Again, I think Luke's probably the future of that room for sure, but it's always good to put. I think it's a good idea if I'm Florida State to put that pressure behind Luke Cromer-Hope early. I don't think Luke Cromer-Hope is coming into FSU really looking at Brock Glenn right now. I think what he's going to do, he's going to look at Brock Glenn to teach him, and then the next spring he'll look at Brock Glenn as a competition, as competition. But I think it's a good idea to bring in another freshman that can already start to push what everybody believes to be your future of that position. Whether or not this other, is it Parker? What's the other kid's name that we just got? I honestly forget. But whether or not he can actually compete for that job at his time at Florida State, again, he's a walk-on. Trevor Jackson. I don't know where I got Parker from, but Trevor Jackson. Now, whether or not Trevor Jackson actually ever plays quarterback for Florida State, in my opinion, is a little irrelevant. I think you bring in a guy who's going to already have Luke on edge a little bit, and I think that's a good thing. Don't get comfortable, because apparently that's kind of some of the stuff that happened with AJ Duffy and some of these other guys is they never, Jordan Travis was there, and there was never a sense of urgency with the backup guys to develop. They were just there, happy to be playing behind Travis. Well, DJ is just a 1-year guy. Brock Glenn does not go into the following year as the guaranteed starter. And you have 2 freshman quarterbacks who could compete. I love it. So not a lot to go in there in quarterback in terms of position battles, but I do think seeing the younger guys maybe compete is going to be fun to watch. And at a minimum, I think, again, iron sharpens iron. They'll be ready for that competition, because in 2025, I don't expect FSU to add a transfer quarterback. I expect them to go with some of the homegrown. That competition is going to be pivotal to the future of this program. Might as well start that competition a little early. So, again, I like the addition of Trevor Jackson. I really do. Panama says, I like Trevor Jackson at QB. Watched his Elite 8 highlights and high school videos. Dude, this dual threat reminds me of Vince Young. I have a feeling Jones is going to come out like a dog and take that starting position. Jones. I don't know who we're talking about, but we're on the quarterbacks right now. Jalen's talking about his visits ever since they've come recruiting my class of 25. Everything's come at me fast. Coach is saying they want me on their team and the visits, but won't pull the trigger. Send an offer to me. Any advice? Continue to take your visits. Your class of 2025. I've never been through that process, but my advice would, honestly, to you, just continue to take your visits. Your class of 25, so they may not be looking to add you, offer you any scholarships as of right now. Just keep working on that field, keep improving your game. If they want you to visit, man, take your visits. Running back. Now, running back is the first position that I think gets a little interesting. And we have a couple positions on here that get pretty interesting. Toll Philly's the only guy that you go, okay, he's a lock. And he's a lock because we know how Toll Philly is used. I don't expect Lawrence Toll Philly to be a 20 carry per game guy. I think everybody knows that. Now, he might play a ton of snaps, but as we know, a lot of that is going to be out of the backfield type stuff in the passing game. running game, all of that. The question becomes who's complementing Toafili or who's Toafili complementing, however you want to word that. Because, of course, you bring in Rodell Williams, you bring in Cam Davis, you have Keziah Holmes on the roster, and you have Singleton on the roster. Danzy's also coming in, though I don't expect Danzy. I think Danzy's probably the one guy that doesn't play much in that running back room, at least off the bat. And then I forget Buddy's name. He's listed as a running back. Jakai's brother. Is it Lucas, Jaden Lucas or whatever? So that's your running back room. I really think the competition is between Keziah, Williams, and Cam Davis. Spring is going to be critical for Keziah Holmes. I think FSU brought Rodell Williams in to challenge Keziah Holmes. I think Cam Davis is going to get in just off of natural talent. He'll get his opportunities. Very similar to what FSU was doing stuff with like Rodney Hill and some of those younger running backs. They'd get their opportunities. But this spring is going to be critical for Keziah. I'm not sure Keziah doesn't start, but I'm not sure he does either. Keziah could go from being the potential starter to being even out of the rotation. That's how critical this spring is for him. Because if Rodell Williams passes him up, and if we think that Cam is as good as advertised, yeah, there's a chance that Holmes after spring, and though I'm pretty positive, I'm 95% sure he extended with the battle's end. But again, there's nothing binding him to that, at least not that I know of. Yeah, if he comes out of spring as the third running back, I mean, that's great for Florida State in a sense. One thing about Mike Norvell's offense, you're gonna get production out of that running back room, right? But yeah, I think out of this competition, I think Keziah Holmes is the player to watch. I think he has the most to gain and the most to lose by far. Cam's not going anywhere. He's a true freshman. Whatever Cam gets, is like an added bonus. Rodell Williams was brought in here for a reason. And I'm not so sure it was just a depth thing. And if you go watch Rodell's tape, he's got good. He didn't get a bunch of opportunities at Bama, but he did run for what? I think over 500 yards at 5 yards a carry. But he has great vision, in my opinion. I like his feet, I like his vision, and he finishes runs pretty hard. Meaning he'll run over some guys. Keziah Holmes, this is a big spring for him. That is the battle. Keziah Holmes. He could either, in my opinion, he can go from being the starter to maybe being third on the depth chart. Now, that's assuming that Davis is as advertised. I think Holmes will start the season. That's interesting wording there, Vontae. You think he'll start or just start the season? Do you think by the end of the season he's not interesting? Interesting. Montre says he think the Bama transfer going to be the starter. So we're kind of split on who the starter is. Nathaniel says Holmes is a beast. Again, this is not really a Toafili comparison. Toafili will be on the field game one, that's for sure. Toafili's going to be on the field every game. But again, there's Toafili's role, and then there's the other running backs, right? So Toafili was always on the field, but an FSU would rotate your Rodney Hills, your Trey Bensons, even your CJ Campbell's at point. But none of them gave you what Toafili gave you out of the backfield. That's why I'm not really I'm really not putting Toafili in this competition, though I understand he is the running back. I'm kind of putting him in his own lane, if you know what I mean. And I think the only guy on the roster that can mimic what he does is the other true freshman, who I don't think is going to quite be ready. Though I am interested to see Singleton, and Singleton could be the guy. So, because if you look at FSU's depth chart, they always have it listed as a tailback and a running back, right? Singleton could be the guy that plays behind Toafili, as he has a lot of speed. I don't know if he has the same skill set in terms of catching the ball and things of that nature. Singleton could be that guy. But those other three are going to be in the mix for that kind of your workhorse type back. That Keziah Holmes, Williams, and Davis, I think. We saw Keziah, he's just the Jag. I won't say that. We haven't seen enough of him to say that. Aren't you a linebacker, Jalen? I've heard Singleton has been one of the fastest backs. Do you think he's developed enough to push for a? Well, he's only a freshman. He was a true freshman this year. So if you're asking me, do I think he'll be ready as a redshirt freshman? I mean, again, I think he can maybe help fill that Toafili role when Toafili has to go to the bench. I should have been more clear. I think he gets more snaps than the others. He showed the ability to be patient, fall forward last year. So yeah, that's kind of my take on the running back position. Again, way too early position battles, but if I had to pick a starter as of right now, because that's going to be part of these, I'm gonna go with Roydell Williams right now. Again, I'm not rooting against Keziah at all, and I'm hoping that again you bring in a guy to set the other guy on fire and light a match under him and get him motivated, or whatever. Not saying he's not motivated, but you get what I'm saying. But as of right now, I would pick Williams to be the starter for you. This is way too early position battles. Let's move on to your wide receivers. Maybe the most intriguing, in a positive way, the most intriguing position group on the field, because somebody had asked me this before, but I can't pick him. I really can't tell you who is wide receiver 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I don't know. And I think that's a beautiful problem to have. Not like in the past where the problem was you just didn't have enough. As my man Zoe would say, you just had a bunch of Jags at the wide receiver. I don't believe that's the case this year at all. Like if you told me that Hakeem took a step and your wide receivers was Hakeem, Dustin Hill, and Jacobs to start the season, I could wholeheartedly see it. And guys like Malik Benson and some of these other guys were there for rotation purposes. Ken Trump. But if you told me Malik Benson won wide receiver number 1 and Ja'Kai Douglas is in the slot and who's some other guys we had, and Portier was on the opposite side of Malik Benson, I can totally see that too. You got a lot of talent. It's going to be that. You talk about fun. It's going to be fun to watch that position group because they all bring something different. There's a bunch of different skill sets. All of them can complement each other in certain ways. You got a guy like Malik Benson who's known for his over-the-top speed. Maybe it would be smart to pair him with Kentron Portier on the opposite side because they bring two separate, one guy's over top, one guy's more of the chain mover across the middle of the field. He's a more of a bigger-bodied wide receiver. And then, those slot guys, you always want them shifty. That's where Jacobs comes in. That's where Ja'Kai comes in. I actually want them to move Dustin Hill out of the slot position this year. I understood why they had him kind of in there last year because you had Keon and Johnny on the outside. I actually think Dustin can play better outside of that position. So I'll be interested to see how they move Dustin Hill around. Again, Hakeem Williams, obviously, well, I won't say obviously, but I believe Hakeem has the highest ceiling of the entire group. We've seen that big body move when it's we've seen it when he's ready to go. one of the biggest issues with Hakeem last year as a freshman was just the work, being used to that type of work. You kind of saw it in the spring or in the fall, whatever that was, some of the clips where he just looked a little lackadaisical, but that's a freshman, right? That's a freshman. But as a redshirt freshman, he should be more prepared, and I'm interested to see, can we get Hakeem Williams on the field as a redshirt freshman? I think that's going to be a big deal. I think that position group is good. You lost Joshua Burrell today. I would not shock it. You've already lost 2 from that group, and Goldie Lawrence and Joshua Burrell. Wouldn't shock me after spring if you lost another one, like a Deuce Spann. I know Darian Williamson was with the Battles in, but I would still watch out for that one again. He's another guy. You talk about Burrell. He's another guy who can't stay healthy. But it would not surprise me if you lost one more from that group, especially as the freshmen start to come in, as the LaWayne McCoys start to come in, and the Elijah Moores. Very talented group. I can't tell you as of right now who the we'll do the 3, who the 3 wide receivers are. But I will take my best stab at it. I'll take my best stab at it. And as of January, oh man. As of January, I'm gonna go with Malik. I'm gonna shift it up a little bit. I'm gonna go with Malik Benson, Hakeem, and Dustin Hill as my top 3 receivers for next year. Going out a little bit of a limb, but that's what I'm gonna go with as of right now. And I think they'll rotate plenty, which obviously, right? I think they will rotate that room plenty. Jaylen Brown, I ain't even mentioned him yet, but I think they will rotate them 3 plenty. Jeff says, I don't know if the Bama transfer is going to be the starter, but he's going to be in a lot of the rotations, maybe even the second the second one in, because he'll get the tough yard. Talking about the running backs. Okay, talking about the running backs. I think Portier has it, but damn, don't let him easily down the stairs. He might twist an ankle. Him, Burrell, and Williamson just injured all the time. Williamson and Spann will probably leave. You got Hakeem, Dustin, and Portier. I like that mix-up. I don't think you brought – here's my problem with this one, Sports Market, is now this is going to depend on how fast is Hakeem. Who on that 3 is stretching – okay, because we talked about building this offense, right? You got to remember now. We talked about building this offense for DJ Uyungale's strengths. That's what we talked about. His strength is the vertical passing game. So when you start that's why I got Malik Benson in mind. When you start not having that speed on the field, then you kind of. So I think I don't mind that starting lineup, but that's going to depend on the over the top speed of maybe Dustin or Hakeem. Obviously, we know Portier is not that. James says he thinks Hakeem definitely starts. Hondo's got Hakeem, Ja'Kai, and Dustin. Panama's got Benson. I like this one. Actually like this one a lot. I could see this one. Benson, Hakeem. And that's what I think I kind of see what Panama sees. Like, I think Benson and Hakeem can really complement each other. So my question was, who's that third? FSU loved Dustin Hill last year, even as a true freshman. Granted, he was a 35-year-old true freshman, but even as a true freshman, they loved Dustin Hill. So that's why I picked him. But they love Ja'Kai too, quite honestly. And Ja'Kai's a dog, and Ja'Kai's been one of my favorite players for a few years now. So I could actually see that lineup a lot. I have a hard time seeing number 7 not being on the field, though. And obviously, again, a lot of rotations. I think Jacobs is going to get his opportunities. It's going to be a lot of rotations in that receiving room for sure. for sure. KCS says go with the young bucks. Keem, Payson, Jacobs. Let these seniors be backups. I hear you. Especially when you're talking about Port. And again, nothing against Portier, nothing against Williamson, but FSU's recruited over those guys. That doesn't mean those guys can't be effective weapons for you and can't be effective players in that room. But the talent in that room are the guys that are younger than them. Absolutely. Zoe doesn't think, let me guess, Zoe, you think Hakeem a Jag, don't you? Come on, man. Think Hakeem just a Jag? There's no way in January I can say whether a guy's ready or not. I got Hakeem starting next year. You heard it here first. Well, first year playing with them, Jordan probably just didn't have that, Jordan didn't have that chemistry with them. And Shakai does need to stay healthy as well. Let's move on to tight end. Now, there's a group that I have no idea. And Morlock can be put in permanent marker. Morlock is going to be tight end 1. But as we saw last year, FSU, when they got the bodies, they will work. I mean, Marcus and Douglas, Morlock, Jaheim, and hell, even Preston Daniels all played some pretty significant snaps last year at times. It's going to be interesting to see how FSU rotates this tight end room. Again, I think the top guy, we know who the top guy is. The question's going to be, is there a person that fills those other roles? Is Brian Courtney ready to get on the field? Is he not a linebacker? I thought they moved him to linebacker last year offseason. Guess now he's back at tight end. Okay. And again, we talked about Burrell Powers, big athlete, has the size and the measurables. Are we going to see him on the field? How is Jackson West on this football team still? It's not that I don't like the man. I've never seen the man. First time I saw Jackson West was in the Orange Bowl. Go figure why. Because 50 players sat out of the Orange Bowl. So I have no idea what's going on and how Jackson West is even still on this football team. But maybe Jackson West is that sleeper that I just have no idea who he is. He'll be a player next year. And then you got Landon Thomas, who I think will have the opportunity to kind of fill those other roles, obviously. But you always want to ease your freshman in there. You don't want to put too much on a Landon Thomas. But he's talented, and obviously was at one point the number 1 tight end in the country, and then he dropped like 8 spots. I don't know how that happens. It's not like the kid got worse, but okay. I can still consider him the number 1 tight end in the country, Landon Thomas, and he'll probably definitely be in the mix there at the tight end. So the tight end position is a little interesting once you get past Morlock because it's question mark, question mark, question mark, question mark, question mark. You have no idea what you're getting from anybody else in there. Anybody else. Even the freshman who is a 5-star all-world. That's high school. Now you're in the ACC. Now you're at FSU. I have no idea what Landon Thomas is going to be. So, obviously, Morlock 1. I'm going to go on a limb and say Brian Courtney 2 and Landon Thomas 3. I have a hard time seeing how you keep the 5-star out of the mix, especially, again, when I have no idea who these other guys are. I would love to say Burrell Powers gets in the mix, again, because if you look at his measurables, he's got the size, the length. But we'll see. And then again, Jackson West is talk about a Jag. Yeah, there you go. I agree, man. I think Biscuit will be missed a little bit. I think Biscuit. I don't really understand why Biscuit left. I think he had a chance to come in here. He had a chance to actually push Morlock for that number 1 spot, in my humble opinion. Morlock had his moments last year, but so did Biscuit. I think Biscuit could have legitimately competed for the number 1 spot. But he went to go play for Kenny, which kind of makes sense because Kenny recruited him out of high school and all that. Kenny was the offensive coordinator when he committed here, so. Man, we're going to find out. We're going to find out what Jackson West is or isn't. Jackson West is the true Knoll. Good for Jackson West. I'm all happy for the true Knowles. Can he play true football? Is my question. Morlock, Thomas, West, Powers. No Brian Courtney for you, Peter. Wow. Okay. Who's the blocking tight end? That's a great question. Maybe that's Jackson West. Maybe that's why they like Jackson West. Maybe he can block very well. If Thomas would have waited till probably. Jackson West made good block. Oh, there you go. Jackson West may very well be your blocking tight end. Yeah, I thought they moved Courtney to linebacker too, but they did. Or he's our Travis Hunter. Either they didn't move him or he's our Travis Hunter. Because I thought they moved him to linebacker too, and I forget which game that was. I think it was one of them blowouts. They had him in as tight end. He even caught a pass. I said that before Jaheim Bell declared too. I thought Jaheim Bell could have benefited probably from coming back a year. And what's up in same mob? O-line, man. The O-line room, that's where I think I've said it before. That's where this team will get either made or broken, is on the old offensive line. This team has a chance to be pretty good. B plus level team next year, definitely in the hunt for the ACC. And if you can win the ACC, you'll be in the playoffs. But if they get some of these young players to finally hit, I think you have an O-line that can make this team really good. Because the more you can run the ball and set the play action with DJ, the better your offense is going to be with that speed that you've brought in on this team. You have your tackles are probably the biggest question going into next year. And the competition on the offensive tackle side, obviously, Robert Scott comes back again. We talk about injuries in that wide receiver room. Robert Scott, man, he can't stay on the field. It sucks because I like Robert Scott. I thought Robert Scott might hit the portal. They got to figure out this offseason. I don't know if the book's closed on Robert Scott just yet. In terms of, I'm not saying he'll hit the portal, but I think they need to take a heavy look at whatever's wrong. They need to figure out if what Robert Scott has is chronic. Can it not get better? Would it be better for him to just medically disqualify or something of that nature? Because when you can only play, bro, one of these games, I don't remember which one it was, Robert Scott literally played like the first 5 snaps of the game, and I don't remember seeing him at all in that game the rest of the way. I don't remember which game that was. He literally played like the first series, and then he wasn't in there the rest of the way. It was Darius Washington the rest of the way. If he can't play, I don't know how it helps him taking that roster spot or just taking those reps that could develop a Lucas Simmons, a Jalen Early, a Julian Armella. That's how I kind of view that. Again, I like Robert, but they have to figure out is that injury, fix it up, whatever. They have to do this offseason is going to be critical for obviously Robert Scott. Then opposite of Robert Scott, or there's not opposite of him, or maybe behind him. That's where you start getting into some of these other guys. Julian Armella. You got to think at some point he's getting on the field. Jalen Early actually got in the field versus Georgia before Julian did, which was interesting to see. And they had him at tackle. So my guess is they like Early at tackle. They like Armella, Robert Scott, and of course Jeremiah Byers. So probably your 4 at the top of your depth chart at the tackle position. Darius is an interesting one there. With the addition of Richie Leonard, I don't know if you move, you're not gonna. I don't know if Darius is still gonna be in that mix at center or not. Darius is also an interesting one there at tackle, which gives you 5 Byers, Scott, Armella Early, Darius, and then the 6th guy is the guy who can take this. The 6th guy is the guy who takes your offensive line, who has the ability to take it to the next level if he's ready to rock. And that's Lucas Simmons. Right? Lucas Simmons is the guy who has the ability to completely change the dynamics of your offensive line. Lucas Simmons has all the tools to be one of the top offensive tackles in the entire country. Moving to the interior of your O-line, we talked about Richie Leonard already. I'm very curious to see if he can snap the ball, because I think if he can snap the ball, I think that makes your center position that much better. It puts pressure on Maurice Smith. Maurice Smith is another guy who, I think when Maurice is in there, he plays fairly well. The problem with Maurice is, like Robert Scott, now he's more healthy than Robert Scott, but not by much, man. Maurice gets banged up. Can't stay healthy. He misses games. Can Richie Leonard help alleviate that? Because I actually think your guard positions are probably your strongest positions. With the addition of Ferguson, and you already have Keandre Jones on the roster, man, I like those two. For both guys, former Alabama. Well, Keandre's from Auburn, but both guys played SEC West offensive linemen. I mean, I like both of those guys at my guards positions. And if I can get Leonard in the middle, man, I think that's a big deal. And I really don't know if there's anybody really competing for those other guard spots. I mean, there's a question of, could you bring Jeremiah Byers inside? Estes is still on the team. You are bringing in 4 freshmen, but I don't expect them to have any real impact on that offensive line. As of January 24, my starting offensive line from left to right. This is not necessarily what I would do. So when I'm giving these to you, this is not necessarily what I would do. This is what I think is going to be. And what I think is going to be at left, man, I think it's going to be Robert Scott to start it off. We'll see how his health goes. I think you're going to go Robert Scott, Ferguson, Maurice. Scratch that. I think Leonard to beat out Maurice. Leonard, Keandre, and Byers. And that's what I think your starting O-line is going to look like. If it were me from left to right, then this is obviously, I don't have the insight of this staff, so I don't know what they see. This is just me projecting, and this is what I would love to have on the field, right? I'm not saying that these guys are ready, but if it was me, it'd be Lucas Simmons at left tackle, Ferguson, Leonard, Keandre, and at right, Armella. If it was me, that would be my O-line. But of course, that all depends on the growth and progression of the younger guys, Lucas Simmons and Armella in particular. But if it was me and I was putting together an offensive line, Lucas Simmons would be at left tackle, Ferguson would be left guard, Leonard would be my center, my right guard would be Keandre, and my right tackle would be Julian Armella. That was my offensive line. And I don't disagree with this. My question becomes, where though? He's got to beat somebody out, and I don't know who's going to be who he's going to beat out. I don't disagree with you. I just don't know where. And on my O-line, I can't see him beating out any of the guys. On my O-line, the only place I can see him starting is at center for me. It's the only place I can see him starting on my O-line. Defense time. As we continue marching, man, hit the like button again, subscribe, share. We got to get into this defense. These way too early position battles coming into the spring. The D line D line is going to go over a major overhaul this spring. The D line, you lost a lot. You're losing Verse, Fisk, Malcolm Ray, Dennis Briggs. I mean, just those guys right there are some of the key depth that you had and key starters that you've had. Gilbert Edmonds, another depth guy that you're losing. With that said, you are bringing in Durage, Lolo, MJJ, D.D. Holmes. I got to check and see if D.D. Holmes is an early enrollee. I don't think he is. He has the size to play early. I just don't know if he will. I am more confident in my ends than I am my interior guys still. I like the addition of the edge guys. I don't know if this is a hot take, but one of my expectations is the West Virginia D lineman we got, Durage or however you pronounce that. Tawambe, I believe is his first name. I don't believe he plays a lot of defensive end. I believe they will use him a lot in different ways. I think they will slowly turn him into an interior D lineman. I think that's the plan. Don't know that, obviously. That's just my speculation. I'm going to, because I think that position groups needs it now. Obviously, this is way too early spring. So after the spring, they may address whatever they need to address in that room. Then I still think that interior D-line could still be fleshed out a little more. But my ends I like. I like my rotation at end, to be quite honest with you. I like Marvin Jones Jr. I like Pat. I like Lolo. And then I have a feeling that somebody on the roster already takes a leap. The Jaden Joneses of the world, the Dante Andersons of the world. You know, it's just you can call it a hunch. And then, again, Tawambe, who's going to rotate a lot, he's also in that mix. I like what you got at defensive end. I actually think your defensive end, the ceiling won't be as high. Right? So you don't have a Jarrett Verse as of right now. But your floor is a lot better at D end than it was a year ago. Frankly, I think if Verse and Pat weren't on the field, yeah, Gilbert. Oh, I forgot about Byron Turner. That's another guy that can take a leap. But if Verse and Pat weren't on the field last year, it wasn't too hot to watch. Byron Turner was still finding his way, and Gilbert Edmonds just wasn't it. Right? Gilbert Edmonds just wasn't it. So it's gonna. I think your floor is gonna be better. I think when you rotate, you won't lose as much of a step as you were a year ago. I think Byron Turner continues to take that step. Right? I think Byron Turner improves off of the first real year he had where he got to play. I thought he played well enough that I think he'll take a step this year. A lot of it is going to depend on how good actually Marvin Jones Jr. is. At the end of the day, a lot of this depends on, is MJJ the 5-star he was coming out of high school, or did injuries at Georgia delay his progression? Was he not able to develop at Georgia because of injuries and other things? I think they didn't. I don't think they used him particularly well at Georgia personally. But the truth of the matter is, how good the edges play is all going to be dependent on that guy. MJJ is this year's Jermaine. He is this year's Verse. I'm not saying he's those players. I'm not saying he's first round player. What I'm saying is he's going to be dependent on the future of that room. Depends on, does he fulfill those expectations, right? As far as Boots goes, seeing Boots in person, I think he might be 2 years away, but he has a whole offseason. Boots is very slim, very slim. So I don't really have an expectation for Boots next year, which is a good thing because he can come out and he could show up in spring at 240 pounds or something, right? Which would be awesome. But I think Marvin Jones Jr. kind of the buck kind of starts and stops with that, because if he's not that, I think the Oregon State guy was a great pickup to pair with Pat. And again, I still think the rotation room with Byron Turner, I think guys will continue to develop in that room. And I think you have a deep room. The problem is, or not necessarily a problem, but the thing with it is Marvin Jones Jr. can take that edge room for being, and obviously I can't gloss over Pat's progression either. I kind of think we know what we get in Pat, but let's not act like Pat Payton didn't take a step this year as well. Pat got better this year than he did the previous year. Does Pat still need to improve? Absolutely. But Pat Payton has a chance to be an All-American next year. He's on that type of trend. At a minimum, All-ACC first team. But he's on that projection to be an 8, 9 sack, 10 sack guy. I think he can do it. I mean, you saw the first play against Georgia. Wasn't the first play or something like that? When the starters are all in there, and what Pat does, blows that thing up. Should have had a sack and a fumble recovery, right? So obviously Pat's progression is key. But I'm putting a lot of emphasis on Marvin Jones Jr. because he can really take that defensive end room to the top. If he can tap into his potential and be that guy, I really believe that. But I like the players that you have in that room. I like the diversity you have in that room. And what you really have are some younger guys who we haven't seen yet that are going to get an opportunity to make a name for themselves. The interior, let's move inside a little bit. The interior of that room is where once I get past the top two, that's where I struggle. Even though I have a ton of expectations put on Daniel Lyons that I'm expecting him to take a leap. I like KJ Sampson, but he will still be just a redshirt freshman. And I think Grady Kelly will be a solid rotation guy. My issue is I just don't believe he is going to be an impact guy. We'll see if he proves me wrong. I think Kelly's a rotation guy. I don't expect him to come in and set the world on fire like Braden Fisk did at that same position last year. I would have loved for us to get a bigger body. But Tawambe is also a guy who I think they play a lot in that interior, and he matches up well with some of these guys. Adrian, come here. I like the diversity of my D-line. I like the different body type. I like all those things. I just, at some point on the defensive line, and strictly talking interior guys, sometimes you just need space eaters. I just need a guy to go in there and clog a space and let everybody else the freedom to move. I don't think we have enough of those bodies on my interior. That's my issue. That's how I feel about that. Other than Darrell Jackson, I don't think we have just a guy who's going to clog the middle of the D-line that allows one-on-ones, that allows linebackers. It keeps the offensive linemen off of my linebackers. When Darrell Jackson has to get a breather, who's filling that role? Thank you, sir. When Darrell Jackson needs a breather, who's filling that role? That's my biggest worry with my D-line is I don't think we need at least one more of those guys. You're right. Last year you had Lovett and Fisk and obviously Farmer, but then you could throw Briggs in there. You could throw bodies. And unless Daniel Lyons puts on 30 pounds. I don't know if he is that. I like Daniel Lyons as a little bit of a smaller weight. When I say smaller, I'm still talking about a 290-pound human being. But I like Lyons to be more athletic. Farmer, I don't. Farmer is that he's not that type of defensive tackle. He's not a nose guard type of player. So I don't think Farmer doesn't fit that role. Farmer's best attributes is his quickness. That's why he gets 5-6 sacks. That's why Farmer has 5 or 6 sacks. So I just don't know who that guy is. I think you need that guy. And if they can find that guy, if best bet is the Nas White, but that is a true freshman who I don't know if you want to put that pressure and put him in that situation. So that'd be my only worry at D tackle. Starting D line from left to right. Or, yeah, we'll do left to right. I think the Oregon State guy, Lolo. I think, obviously, Jackson Farmer. And then Pat. I think the Oregon State guy will get the start. That's tough. I'm gonna say he gets the start, depending on what Marvin Jones Jr. looks like in the spring. Remember, this is all pre-spring. If MJJ goes up there and dominates the spring, like if you remember the way Jermaine Johnson looked in our spring that year, if he can go out there and look like that, and again, that's a lot of expectation to put on him. If he can go out there and look like that, though, then I'll put him in that starting role. But for now, I'm gonna go with Lolo, and I just call him Lolo because I don't know how to pronounce his name. But that could obviously be Marvin Jones Jr. as well. But I think Lolo's a safe pick. I think he's a safe pick. Quick comments, and then we'll move on to backer, which, that's going to be a mouthful talking about them backers. Irv says we have more depth this year on the D-line. I think it's possible we can keep that party going, but I agree. It depends on Marvin Jones Jr. Tyler says, man, I love all the options we have at DN. We attacked that position group hard this offseason for a reason. UGA kept putting Marvin Jones Jr. out on the field even when he was hurt. Stupid stuff, man. Boots needs to get into that storm room and get some size for sure. Pat should get double-digit sacks and double-digit pass breakups also. I like to think FSU has a couple in the bag. Why else do you let Ray leave unless he was wanting some absurd amount of money? I agree. In second portal, we need a nose tackle type guy. I was hoping Malcolm Ray kind of did stay personally. Right, which is why for now I'll pencil him as a starter, simply because he complements Pat. When we talk about complementing players, we know Pat's our pure edge rusher. Malolo will be able to hold the other side of that defensive line. Again, as for right now, if you told me Marvin Jones Jr. ended up being the starter, it wouldn't shock me in the least. And then Jeff says he thinks Marvin Jones Jr. would be opposite start with Pat. And again, if you told me that, doesn't shock me. I think Lolo is the safe pick. Linebackers. I don't even know where to begin because there's no beginning here. I don't know where you start at linebacker. Good news. You brought back DJ Lundy for what that's worth. And then you got your boy out of Alabama. What's his name? Sean Murphy. Great addition, but unproven addition. But he brings a different level of athlete, I think, that position at 6'2", 225, and probably moves better than some of those 6'2", 205 linebackers you ended up bringing in here. Again, I don't know where to start with the backers. Now, FSU is more of a 4-2-5, even playing a little bit of 3-3-5 at times, but that third backer usually rushes the passer. I'll say what I want to see, and then I'll try to predict what we see. I'll start with what I want to see is obviously Murphy. We should start a prayer right now. If you believe, if you don't pray, that's on you. I'm not forcing anything on you. But if you pray, we should just start a prayer right now and say, "Dear Lord, I pray that my starting linebackers are Murphy and Blake Nicholson. Amen." Simple prayer. Don't have to get too in depth with it. If it's me and I'm building this team on NCAA, that's apparently supposed to come out sometime this year, I'll believe it when I see a commercial for it. My starting linebackers are those two. Those are the two highest upsides, highest athletic ability. Those are the two. Blake Nicholson and Murphy, those are my two backers. Fortunately, the game's not played that way. And I have no idea who else are going to be. You got Omar Graham. You got who's the other backer, guys? The other freshman. Forget his name. Fryer. I forget his first name. But you got him, who actually played well at times. I'm not going to doubt that. You brought in Jaden Parrish, and you brought in another guy, and you got DeMarco Ward, who's an interesting prospect. We'll see. But you see what I'm getting at? When you get past Murphy and when you get past Blake, it's a bunch of what ifs. It's that whole gym talk that I don't even want to get back into, but all these gyms, all these sleeper guys that we got, all these gym pickups, these Randy specials, as we call them, the water gets real muddy when you get past those two. And then, of course, you have Lundy. And if the great thing is, if Murphy and Blake, man, if they can live up to what they can be, what we hope them to be, then Lundy can go right back to what he was being asked to do when you had Bethune and Deloach, and Lundy can be just as effective, if not more effective, than he was last year. They like to use Lundy as just a downhill thumper and a guy who they also would like to blitz. They blitzed Deloach a lot last year too. So if you can do those things, man, my linebacker room goes from a worry to maybe a strength. But that is all hypotheticals. None of that. There is not a linebacker in that room, with the exception of DJ Lundy, that has a lick of college production. That has to be scary for some, because it is scary for me. And it'd be less scary if you told me they were all a bunch of 4 and 5 stars. Then I'd say, okay, well, somebody's going to emerge. They're not even that. They're not even that. Again, you get past Murphy, you get past Nicholson, and then it's a bunch of hardworking 3 stars that got to get the job done. I'll take a hardworking 3-star over 5-star any day. Yeah, and it says nobody. So I struggle with that room. Again, if it was up to me, Blake, Murphy, and then Lundy being used the way he was used last year, that's a perfect trio. My guess is Lundy definitely start. Lundy's going to start off as a start. My guess, I don't think you bring in Murphy and he doesn't start. Like again, the water gets murky, man, when you start talking about some of these transfer guys. Murphy didn't come over to Florida State. He could have stayed at Bama if he wanted to sit the bench. I think, unfortunately, what I want is not what I'm going to see. What I think we're gonna get at linebacker is Lundy, Murphy, which is going to be great. But I think Omar Graham will be. And hopefully Omar Graham takes the next step. Don't get me wrong. Hopefully Omar Graham takes the next step for sure. But that's what I think we'll see. And if you can't tell, there's one position group that I am not thrilled about. It's the linebacker position. I'll be completely transparent with you guys on that. There's one position on this team that really I can't call, and if you want to say that like last year for me, what was it? Last year was the safety room. I was like, man, I don't know about my safeties. It had me worrying at night sometimes. My linebackers are in an even more dire spot, I think, than the safety room. Getting Murphy's huge, but again, he's got to prove it. Getting Lundy back is great as a veteran leader for that room, but everybody who's watched Florida State knows what Lundy's limitations are at this point. You know what he's giving you, but you also know what he's not giving you. And then we watched those backers in that Orange Bowl. Granted, it's the Orange Bowl. I get it. I think you got to grade them with a curve. Grade them on a curve in that Orange Bowl. But still, there's one position that I am not thrilled about. It's that one. But that means it makes it even more exciting to watch them in the spring, because any sense of life we see from the linebackers in the spring, everybody's just going to be like, woo, licking their chops and be like, yes, we got us one. So that, what worries you also makes it exciting to watch going forward. So let's go to the comments. And then we're going to finish off, of course, with our DBs, which might be the most talented group on the team. Murphy, Lundy, and Nicholson. Yeah, that's the mix-up right there. Everybody, amen. Yeah, amen to the prayer. Seriously, DJ Lundy and Murphy. That's who I think. Oh no, not the diamonds in the rough. Hey, you know, once we start having the diamond in the rough conversation, you know where you know. Marco, you still here? We already sent you guys. All these ifs and wishing, but your coach is a 500 coach, New King. Your coach is a 500. In layman terms, I was watching Murphy senior tape, and wow, that dude is a beast. Hey, he just needs to bring it here. He ain't in high school no more. He just needs to bring it here. As long as he bring it here, Tyler, we in good hands. He in good hands. DBs, man. Whole bunch of bodies in that DB room. I'll just knock this out of the way. I think AZ, and I said this before, and I kind of stand by this. When we were strictly talking corners to start this off and not the safety room, I know AZ has one of those spots. I feel like Earl Little has another one, and then there's Fentrell Cypress. Those are the three. Edwin Joseph's going to make that interesting when he's healthy. I don't think the Charles Lesters, I don't think the Jamari Howards and those guys are going to compete as true freshmen, though they may see the snaps. Quindarius Jones is a guy who could mix it up in that room a little bit. As a true freshman, he was second on the depth chart in a lot of games. Interesting room. I'm hoping Edwin gets back healthy, because I think, and this is not a knock on Cypress, right? I don't think Cypress wasn't what we expected, but I don't think Cypress is as bad as people try to say he was. If what I'm saying there makes sense. Cypress was not as he wasn't the number one quarter in the portal that we expected him to be. But I think people are harder on him. I think people are harder on him than they say. He played worse than he really did. With that being said, I think Earl Little completely changes the dynamic of that room. And I said it sometime last week, I believe. Would not shock me if Earl was playing opposite of AZ. Everybody's talking about him being a nickel, and I see boundary corner. I see field side corner on this. I see the guy who can play on the outside with the best of them when I watch Earl Little. I don't see a nickel guy. So if you told me Earl Little was opposite of AZ, that's what I see. That is what I see. We'll see, and those are just small highlights that he had at Bama, right? So not a lot of, but that's what I see. So for me, again, that's what they will do and what I would do. I would have Earl Little, AZ on the outside, and then I would have a combination of Edwin and Cypress as my nickel guy. But that's just me though, and that's how I would. That's how my corner position would look. That's how my room would look. Those three. That's how those three would look for me. When I go to my safeties, obviously it's Shaheem. I think it's got to be Shaheem and Hussey at this point, right? Conrad and Shaheem are your two starters. And then it gets very interesting on the back end there because you brought in a Devontae Brown, who I think is going to be a veteran presence. Now, I think you got more talent back there than you need when you talk about Kirkland coming back healthy and Rawls, and they're going to have bodies back there to definitely play on that back end. Barker, hell, maybe Ricky Knight, maybe Edwin can be a safety. It's going to be interesting to see who makes some moves to safety and how they play that position. But I think your two top guys are pretty much locked in at this point. And the question is going to be who's in the safety rotation. I think when you look at it, Devontae Brown bringing that rotation, it's kind of key because I said it last year and it held true. FSU rotates safeties a lot. There's a reason why Conrad Hussey played so early. And he wasn't even an early enrollee, guys. Imagine if he was. FSU rotates that position. They rotate safeties. So Hussey's going to play a lot. And Shaheem's going to play a lot. That's a given. But they're going to go to their second and third guys in that room. You're going to see, I think, Devontae Brown out there. You're going to see if Barker takes that next step. You're going to see Ashlyn Barker on the field. Again, Ashlyn Barker is the most interesting prospect, or one of the most interesting prospects in that room at that safety position because of his measurables. Like about a 6'3", 200-plus pound safety. You're going to see him out there. Does he take the next step? You're going to see Kirkland out there. First of all, Kirkland's got to get healthy, as he didn't have a very healthy last year. But Kirkland's going to get snaps. One of the huge questions is going to be what happens with Kevin Knowles, who wears number 3. Is he still on this team or does he hit the portal? That's going to be one of the biggest questions. If he's still on the team, it's going to be at safety. If you're still on the team, you have to ask yourself a question. Was his first year at safety just an anomaly, and does he play better as he gets his second year at safety? Or is what you see is what you get with Knowles? I didn't even mention Greedy Vance at one of them corner spots. I like Greedy, man. I think Greedy has dog in him. My problem is he's so small, and I think there's guys with equally as much dog as Greedy. They just have more physical gifts. But don't count Greedy out. Don't count Greedy Vance out. But I think there's guys behind him that just have the same, better physical gifts and the same amount of dog, if not more. I think your corner position is the least of your worries. Then the corner position is the least of your worries. The question is going to be a little bit on the back end with some of your safeties, guys getting healthy. Shaheem, obviously, but Shaheem and Hussey are the two. So if I'm doing my 5-man DB room, the nickel room, my 2 on the outside, AZ and Earl Little. Again, this is mine, and then I'll do what I think we'll see. AZ, Earl. At nickel. At nickel, I'm going to go Cypress. I think Cypress would get the nod. Edwin would get in the rotation. I'm going Cypress at nickel. And, of course, my 2 safeties is going to be Shaheem and Conrad. What I think you'll see, what I think FSU will do is AZ and Cypress on the outside, a combination of Earl, Little, and probably Greedy Vance at nickel. And then your safeties will be the same 2 safeties. So that's what I think you'll see from Florida State. Comment says, Isaiah Bond or Ja'Cory Brooks. I don't think Ja'Cory Brooks has shown to give you much so far in his college career. Montre said that's me too. Talk about this the DB room. I can see them using Devontae Brown like they did Jamie. Work out better, true corner. McClendon is the comp. Not so, and I'm not. You're maybe not comparing him to Jamie the player, just how the usage. McClendon, remember that safety transfer we got from Arkansas that everybody kind of treated like Devontae, like who is this guy? He never started for you unless it was an emergency situation, but he was a quality backup who knew his role, and whenever he came into the game, there wasn't some crazy bust in the back end. He knew his assignments, and he executed them. I think Devontae Brown will be used a lot like McClendon. That's true. But again, I don't think Cypress played terribly. I think Jerry Jones, to his credit, finished his career on one of the best high notes. Like Jerry Jones, by the time he finished playing football at Florida State, was a legit good corner. Jerry Jones's first 3.5 years, because I don't care what anybody says, it wasn't until the second half of that year, last year, that he turned the corner. For 3.5 years, Jerry Jones put bad tape on film. Bad play on tape. Sorry. Right? Freshman, sophomore. Yeah, for 3.5 years. For 3.5 years, Jerry Jones played terrible football. I don't care what anybody says. And then again, finish his career off on a great high note, or 2.5 years or 3 years, whatever it was for Jerry, but he played bad football. But by the time he got out of here, he was playing excellent football. So shout out to Jerry. I say all that to say, I don't think Cypress has played terrible football. You think Lester's going to be in the rotation? I mean, I don't mind it. I hope so, but there's competition. All right? Competition with guys who've already been in college. My problem with Lester isn't that he can't play. My problem with Lester is he probably weighs 165 pounds soaking wet. That's my problem with Lester. Time for the new bloods. I hear that. If Pat coached him in high school, then I'm gonna trust him to get the most out of Brown. Again, I think you're using Brown in a specific way. You're obviously not bringing in him to be a starter. I have no problems with Brown. I think Pat's going to be good there, and I think he's going to be good in what he's going to be asked to do. AZ, Greedy, Earl, corners, safety, Shaheen, Hussey. Pat really turned Jerry Jones. I'm trying to tell you. Anybody that wants to get at me and say I was wrong about Jerry Jones, go watch him. Go watch Marcus Woodson, Jerry and Jones, and go watch Surtain's Jerry and Jones. They two totally different players. Yeah, the only thing that Lester is putting on enough size, and that the only thing with Lester, he just got to get bigger, man. Lester's, he's skinny, and that's a high school kid. He'd be fine. I'm just not putting it on him to play year one. It doesn't mean he can't get on the field in packages. I think FSU will play. As we continue to talk about this DB room, I do think FSU will play some of the freshman DBs, especially some of the early enrollees like Bates and Lester, both being there early. I think. Is Ricky Knight there too? No, I don't know. I don't think Ricky Knight's there. I know Bates and Lester are early enrollees. So I do think the same way they did with guys like Quintarius Jones, and you did see obviously Hussey. I do think FSU will put those guys in the game in moments. And you don't have the toughest schedule. So those guys could get some burn against some of these other schools. But I don't think you put a lot on their plate early. Ninth year tight end. for context, I've been in the military 14 years. Do the math. Told y'all, because before last season, you were crazy, man. And I don't care. Shout out to you for being right on him. But before last season, you was crazy. Again, I got 3 years of film on him. Again, shout out to Jerry, man. He stepped up. He absolutely stepped up. He stepped up, but you was crazy. I don't care what nobody says. Again, I got 3 years of film, and I don't like to use the injury bug, because if you were on the field, you were on the field. Nobody wants to hear you're injured. It's like the boxer that goes into the fight, gets whooped, and goes, "I was sick. I wasn't feeling myself." Well, you got in that ring and you got whooped. It happens. You injured, don't go on the field. So that's just how I look at it. But there's your roster in a nutshell. Again, a whole lot's gonna happen between now and spring, and then a whole lot's gonna happen after the spring. So this roster, I told y'all in December, the roster that you saw wasn't going to be the roster you took the field with, and you saw how drastically it changed in the course of 2 or 3 weeks when they really attacked that portal. Rosters can completely transform to what you thought it was going to be to what it is. You got your quarterback, you got a ton of new offensive weapons on receiver and running back. All of a sudden, you got a couple new pieces on the O-line. Your D-line has completely transformed itself. You even added some additions to the linebacker. Your team is going to be a completely different team, and I think they're not done, obviously, yet. So that's really why I think like top 25s are way too early as of right now, because you just don't know what the end product is going to be on most of these rosters in college football. I mean, I have no idea. how Bama's roster is going to end up. I don't think nobody at this point knows what's going to happen with Alabama's roster. So it's hard to predict. Bama's a top 15, top 10 team. Again, to me, if you got Bama sniffing the top 15, I think you're kind of crazy. Because I don't think the portal's going to slow down for them. Maybe it finally does, but they lost too much, and they lost the depth. So Florida State, not a finished product, but I think if you're an FSU fan, obviously, you got to feel pretty good about the way your roster looks right now. 2 weeks ago, there was a lot of people on Twitter crying about the way the roster looked. And 2 weeks ago, and some people DM me these questions, and 2 weeks ago, I was telling people that DM me and asked me questions. Again, we were just having conversations, so I'm not putting anybody on the spot. I'm just saying, people are like, man, are you worried? And I'm like, no, you know why I'm not worried? Because it's January 1st. I'm not going to be worried about the roster in January 1st. Come August, and we haven't addressed the needs, then I'll worry. Well, they addressed the needs a week later, and they're not. I don't believe they're going to be done yet. So that's the way too early kind of spring preview of just the position groups. Who's going to be battling who, what those groups may look like. It's going to be interesting to see the ones and the twos and all that. Spring's always a fun time. You can always gather a little bit from spring. Not necessarily an indicator on having a good or bad team, but it does show you the makeup of your team. It also shows you who's putting in the work. So I got Chris Robinson here with a $9.99. He says, what up, Pope Orlando on the check-in. Orlando's always on the check-in. Shout out to my man, Chris, for the love. I get it. I get it. Yeah. Is Bama really going to replace all the talent they lost in the spring? I don't see how they can. I obviously they'll make moves after spring. Obviously there will be players, and probably some of these Washington players that are dipping out of Washington. But I said this, man, when DeBoer got hired. If you're going to tell me this man's going to swap his Bama roster for that Washington roster, when he goes 7-5 year one, they're going to eat him up in Tuscaloosa. Like I said, man, I think Bama's going to be hiring a new coach in 3 to 4 years. And that's not an indictment on DeBoer, who I actually think, again, is a good football coach. There's a certain caliber of player you have to win at Alabama, especially when the monster in Athens is not – they're not dead. They're not – okay, they didn't win it this year, but that monster in Athens is still lurking. And if there was one team in the country that we always said comparable in talent was the monster in Tuscaloosa. The monster in Tuscaloosa is dead. I don't know if there's a team comparable right now to Georgia. I think next year is going to be Georgia and everybody else. From a sheer talent perspective, Georgia's at another clip. And especially if they get Caleb down, Georgia's at a different clip than everybody else. Bama has came down to the mortal. They are on the mortal realm right now. I would argue, and this might sound crazy to some, I'd argue Bama has dropped a notch below the FSUs and the likes of that. And they are losing talent at a clip that I don't know is replaceable. 28 players have hit the transfer portal for Alabama. Think about that. 4- and 5-star guys. I know for a fact FSU is going to add at least 4 more portal players. There you go, Jeff, with some insight for us. Yeah, and that's what they're going to add there. That's what they're going to add. Hundo said, y'all act like I'm saying he was prime time. I just said he had skills, and they were untapped, especially on the Woodson. Shout out to you, Hundo, man. You got it. At the end of the day, you won, bro. Jerry is a good player, bro. You won. At the end of the day, you won. You got it. Pat coached him up well. And at the end of the day, that man got on the field, and that man played good football. You got it. Bama going to have a Pac-12 team. That's essentially what you're doing. You're essentially going to have a Pac-12 team in the SEC. Yeah. I think next year might be kind of crazy for Bama. It's going to be very interesting to see Bama sitting at the Duke Mayo Bowl. Going to be crazy to watch Bama in the Duke's Mayo Bowl next year. That's what Keon Coleman would have did to Michigan, but we'll never know. Thanks, College Football Playoff Committee. Shout out to Panama for that. I don't disagree with that. Man. And after all of that, guys, oops, I turned my music on. My bad. Good show tonight. Again, that was just the early. I try to mix it up sometimes and just have different conversations. Like, it's cool. I don't like to rehash the same tired old conversations. We keep talking about portal. Like, we know. So, excuse me. I want to do a little preview of the spring and some of these position battles and what the roster may be looking like before or after spring. That was the whole goal of tonight's program. Tyler says, do I think Belichick to the Falcons does anything? No. He still don't have a quarterback down there. No, I don't. Falcons are one of the worst. The Falcons have been one of the worst organizations the last 10 years in the NFL. I said that when the Falcons freaking took Pitts, the Falcons had all these needs, and they took a tight end at number 4. That told you everything you need to know. And it's not that Pitts can't be a good player. It's not that Pitts can't be a great weapon. You don't take a tight end in that position when you have a gazillion other needs on that team. They have some decent skill positions now. They need to find a quarterback, but I don't know if Belichick does anything. But we'll see. 7-5 alone for Bama. It says the only way to take Georgia down is to find some dirt on. You ain't lying. Only way to take Georgia, and that might not even matter anymore because again, I don't think the NCAA has any real power anymore, bro. FSU is allegedly on sanctions, and Alex Atkins is still traveling on the road. I don't know if y'all saw the picture that Atkins took with with some recruit today. I thought he couldn't travel. Florida State's supposed to be on all these sanctions. Florida State's supposed to be on all this, and they still adding player after player. Alex Atkins still doing his damn thing. NCAA don't have no real power, bro. NCAA don't have no real power. Shout out to Atkins. But I'm gonna go ahead and get up out of here, guys. We actually ended at a great time. Good 2 hours. I appreciate everybody, man, who came in here. Again, man, hit that like button on the way out. If you didn't hit it on the way in, I haven't checked my likes, but sometimes y'all been kind of stingy with likes sometimes. So I need y'all to get back on that. And at a minimum, guys, that's all you gotta do for me, man. At the minimum, just hit the like button for me. 59 likes, which is and 83 people in here. So there's 30 of y'all who just sitting here staring at my boyish, charming looks. I get it. But get in here, man, and hit my like button. And so hit it on the way out if you didn't hit on the way in. And have a great somebody said, go Bucks. Shout out to the Bucks. I picked them. Go Niners. Yeah, I think it's going to be the Niners and the Ravens. Playoff ball still to come. But shout out to everybody, man. And we might have something for you this weekend. And y'all have a good rest of your Thursday evening. As always, it is your boy POLK over here on 863 Seminole TV. Y'all stay classy, my Seminoles. And we are out here. Go Noles. And I'm saying go Ravens. Caw-caw. I'll holler at y'all later.